our best. It's Monday here on The Story, and tonight, months in the making, the big transportation package that we've been waiting on is now public. The new tax and price hikes that you could be paying. Plus, Governor Tina Kotek wades into the immigration protest controversy after President Trump directed the National Guard and the U.S. Marines to quell unrest in LA. But first, Oregon was the first state in the nation to legalize the magic mushroom industry. The first service centers opened about 2 years ago, but the trip so far has not gone how many hoped. And it's our big story tonight. The FDA has designated the psychedelic compound psilocybin as a breakthrough for treatment for depression as research on the drug continues. But the magic mushroom industry, pioneered here in Oregon, is struggling to gain momentum. And those inside the industry point to a few reasons why. Stephanie Domerat has the story.
We have a mental health crisis. Flat out, we have a mental health crisis. And there's something that can help, and we're not using it, no.
In this downtown Portland high-rise lies a dream for a brighter future.
This is where they come in and they check in. Because people who come here for...
Craig Frank co-owns Sacred Mushroom,
transitional reasons.
one of 25 licensed psilocybin treatment centers in Oregon.
To spark creativity if it's not for a transitional reason or...
Since opening his doors last September,
It's going okay. It's going okay. So this is the largest of our single treatment rooms.
the number of people wanting to take that trip isn't quite as he hoped.
And it's a shame because they were taught they shouldn't engage in something that can really, really, really help them. A lot of times when people are engaging with psilocybin, they seek out nature.
Frank took his first journey with mushrooms after Oregon voters legalized supervised psilocybin therapy in 2020.
Measure 109 regulates a promising approach for depression and anxiety.
Do you wish that you came across this sooner?
Oh, much sooner. God, yes. I was the guy who, honked the horn when you cut me off. And now I'm just, you do you.
Just getting the bed ready for the clients.
AJ Zimfer was one of the first in 2023 to get licensed as a psilocybin facilitator, leaving her longtime career behind.
To be honest, the first 9 months were pretty good, but that was when I was one of the first 100 licensed people.
Now with close to 400 facilitators, the demand for their help isn't keeping up.
That's kind of the problem. The people who are making the money right now in this are the schools. The service centers are not. The licensing fees for them are very high. The facilitators are not, we're breaking even. And most of us are not doing it for the money.
This is the group room. There was enough square footage in here for dosing 8 clients at a time.
For MJ Wilt, breaking even was a high bar.
I just was not making bank. I'm not even breaking even and not even close. Just a small kitchen here.
In April, she shut down her center, Tryptonite Trail,
where the psilocybin was stored. This is the safe cabinet. It's really sad. I had hopes for the space to serve hundreds and hundreds of people. And in the end, it served maybe 25. And then here is the small dosing room.
Wilt worked as a trauma counselor for more than 20 years, but says her journey with psychedelics was so powerful.
It unearths material that you cannot get to in talk therapy. Yeah.
She had to add it to her healing practice.
Offer them a way to get completely to the other side so that trauma is absolutely in the rearview mirror. It doesn't have a way to impact us in daily life.
Wilt Center is one of 6 in the state that have closed in the last 2 years, due in large part, she says, to a battle that began in the 1960s when psychedelics were criminalized.
And what people didn't realize and still don't realize is that these medicines were being used in psychotherapy back then. But the stigma remains as if it were just another drug like cocaine or heroin.
We were first in the nation and to do this work.
Angela Albee leads Oregon psilocybin services under the Oregon Health Authority. She says getting clients is just one challenge facing the industry.
Overall, licensees have experienced banking, insurance, tax filing issues that exist outside of the model, as well as really high rent.
Centers and facilitators are also banned from most advertising, and the cost to patients can be prohibitive, averaging about $2,500 for a 3-part session and rarely covered by insurance.
Breathing this medicine all the way into the very bottoms of your feet.
Albee says one part of the program that is working well, safety. According to the Oregon Health Authority, in the last 2 years, more than 25,000 psilocybin products were sold to clients, and only 13 people needed help from medics. Still, the hesitancy isn't always about physical safety.
But it's also about the relationship you have to wanting to change or wanting to be a catalyst for something that you're trying to work on. And that can be really scary.
Wow, I'm comfortable here,
As for Frank, he hopes people will push past the fear.
These we call the sink in and go to sleep chairs. Depression, loneliness, trauma-related anxieties.
To what could be
They're overcoming us.
on the other side.
And we need it.
Stephanie joins me now. So Stephanie, there are 25 licensed service centers in Oregon. And just to be clear, people have to do the psilocybin there. They can't take it home.
Exactly. So the way the state has this model set up is people have to get the dose there and take the dose there. Now, how long they'll stay at the center really depends on their dosage and how it works through their body. It can be up to 9 hours sometimes.
And you just got new data from OHA for the last 4 months. What stood out to you?
So this is actually new data. We're seeing this for the first time this year. They just started tracking it from January. So for the first quarter of this year, OHA reports that just over 1,500 people took part in the program. Of those who chose to answer, more than 350 of them came from out of state. As far as why people chose the treatment, people reported all sorts of things. Trauma, depression, even for creativity or general wellness. There is also a growing field of treating people who are grieving.
We heard about it in your story there, but why are these fees so high for these centers and facilities?
So it's a little complicated. When voters passed Measure 109 back in 2020, the goal was to have this basically be a program that is self-funded, which means that taxpayer dollars can't go to supporting this program in the long term. So what that means is all of the fees for all of the licenses have to support running this program at the state level. We did talk to OPS, who said they are reducing those costs as much as they can, but the way that the program is set up, it is kind of tough.
Very tough.
Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway after getting an inside look at these facilities?
Well, it was really interesting. I think one of the common themes is that everybody involved in this industry that I spoke with is so passionate about it, and they truly believe in this medicine. Now, keep in mind, this medicine isn't new. It's been around in indigenous communities for thousands of years, but it is new to our Western medical model, which means marrying those two things together gets kind of tough and is pretty complicated. So that's kind of all the kinks that they're trying to figure out. But I do want to mention this is part 1 of a 2-part series. So tomorrow we're actually going to follow along and see how this works in real time. We will be following along with a Portland mom who's grieving the loss of her son as she undergoes psilocybin therapy. We'll meet with her before and after her treatment. And I don't want you to miss this, but I will say she said that she definitely didn't expect at all how this process went. So we'll have that tomorrow for you.
I'm looking forward to that. Stephanie, thanks so much. So now it's your turn to weigh in. Would you take part in the psilocybin program? Why or why not? Maybe you already have and you'd like to share your experience. Email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, the long wait is over. The big transportation funding package that we've been waiting on for months was finally unveiled this morning, with less than 3 weeks left in the legislative session to get it passed. Here it is, your run-of-the-mill, 175 pages worth House Bill 2025. Now, it's worth noting that even the proposals in this version of the bill are still subject to change over the next few weeks. Now, some of the major highlights include accountability measures for ODOT, big changes to the weight mile taxes, and how diesel fuel is taxed, raising the gas tax, increased and new taxes, and starting the pay-per-mile road usage charge program next summer for electric vehicles. But like I said, 175 pages, so there is a lot in this bill, but we're going to focus on some of the elements that will impact the everyday Oregonians the most. And there will be a lot of numbers coming at you the next few minutes, so stick with me. First, the gas tax. The bill proposes a 15-cent increase over the next 3 years. It currently sits at 40 cents a gallon. A 10-cent jump would start next year, and another 5-cent increase in 2028, bringing the total to 55 cents a gallon. Starting in 2029, the gas tax would be indexed to inflation. Under the bill, the statewide transit tax, a payroll tax to fund public transit, would see steep increases in the next few years, eventually tripling its current rate of 0.1%. It would go up to 0.18% next year, then 0.25% in 2028, and eventually 0.3% in 2030. Now, the vehicle privilege tax that dealers often pass on to buyers is doubling from 0.5% up to 1%. That tax is for the privilege of selling vehicles in Oregon. And then there's the new tax that we've been telling you about when you buy a vehicle in Oregon. The bill calls it a transfer tax. As written, it would apply to new and used vehicles that are priced above $10,000. The tax on new vehicles is 2%. On used, it's 1%. So for example, if you bought a new car for $40,000, you would pay a transfer tax of $800. And here's a look at some of the other major hikes you can expect to pay as the bill stands right now. Registration fees for a normal vehicle each year will jump to $113, up from $43. Moped and motorcycle registration goes up to $110, currently at $44. And getting a new title will cost you $182. License fees are also going way up under this bill. Getting a new normal Class C license will be $100, up from $58. And renewing your license will go from $48 to $74. Now, even paying for the skills test is also seeing a huge jump. For a normal license, it will be $111, up from $45. And for truckers, the skills test for a CDL or to remove a restriction will be $540, up from just $145. So really, some big jumps there. But now let's talk about the pay per mile part of this bill, which lawmakers call the road usage charge. The bill would start that program for electric vehicles on July 1st, 2026, so just over a year from now. Plug-in hybrids would be included the following year in July of 2027. Now, the rate per mile would be 5% of the gas tax. So if the gas tax hike in the bill is approved, the gas tax would be 50 cents per gallon next summer. And 5% of 50 cents is 2.5 cents, meaning EV drivers would pay 2.5 cents per mile. That's $1 for every 40 miles driven. Now, if you want to skip the per mile charges, the bill also allows drivers to pay a flat annual fee of $340. That amount is the equivalent of paying for 13,600 miles. All right, so what are all these new taxes and higher fees going to pay for? Well, the majority is expected to go to the State Highway Fund, which is what pays for basic operations in road maintenance at ODOT and local transportation departments like PBOT. But there are some big annual revenue earmarks for other funds. $125 million per year for the Great Streets Fund, which would provide grants to transfer state-controlled streets to local control and make them safer, the kind of thing that's happening, say, on 82nd Avenue in Portland. $25 million per year for the Safe Routes to School Fund, which does pretty much what it sounds. And finally, $125 million per year for something called the Anchor Projects Account, which is intended as a dedicated funding stream for huge projects. Think like the Rose Quarter or the Abernathy Bridge. Now that piece is notable because it comes at a time when ODOT has landed in hot water with lawmakers, specifically because the agency has been struggling to deliver those big projects on budget and on time. And that leads to the next part of the bill focused on holding ODOT accountable. It proposes regular audits on how the agency spends money on both routine road work and major projects. It would also give Oregon's governor the ability to hire and fire the director of ODOT. And whoever the governor would potentially hire for the job would have to be confirmed by a majority vote in Oregon Senate. So here's what Governor Kotek had to say about that earlier this afternoon.
I think it's the right change for the executive in my position to be able to have hire and fire authority over our agency directors. That change was done in 2017, and I don't think it has resulted in any kind of better service from the agency, and in general support that change. At this point, I'm not looking at any changes in the agency, but everything that I can have for stronger tools to hold that agency accountable will help me do my job and serve Oregonians better with that agency.
So again, none of this is final just yet because there are new taxes included in the bill, and they must be approved by a supermajority in each chamber, 3/5 of lawmakers. Democrats had that majority in both chambers, but a member in the House is out for medical reasons, so they'll need a lone Republican to agree. There's also no guarantee Democrats will vote together as a bloc, meaning some changes may be on the way to sway a few Republicans, and they'll have to move fast. The state constitution requires this long legislative session to end on June 29th. Well, across the country, protests against ICE, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, started boiling over the past weekend. You probably saw the scene in Los Angeles where President Trump called the National Guard and today the U.S. Marine Corps to break them up. There were protests in several other cities, including right here in Portland, where 4 people were arrested at the ICE building in Southwest. Late Saturday night, a Department of Homeland Security contractor complained to Portland police that their driveway had been blocked, and officers came out to help clean it up. Here's some Portland police body cam video. Police say protesters used wood, rocks, and street signs to block the driveway. Portland Police Chief Bob Day says this should not be interpreted as police helping out with immigration enforcement. He says Portland is still a sanctuary city, and city resources won't be used to help ICE. But he thinks officers made the right call here.
You know, Portland Police Bureau is trying to walk a very fine line, and I understand that. And it is not a perfectly straight line. It is one that is constantly shifting underneath our feet. The reality is that this effort around immigration is happening. It's not something that's we can deny. It's happening. As my friend likes to say, life is in session. This is going on, and we are being called upon to show up in that space in some way. And I am very clear and very certain that I understand the rules of engagement as they relate to immigration and immigration enforcement and the role of the Portland Police Bureau in that. And I have also said since the beginning that we are going to continue to be engaged with our federal partners. This is not a time for us to pull away. This is not a time for us to be separate in terms of what is in the best interest of Portlanders, because as we are seeing play out in LA, as we have seen play out historically here in the city of Portland, that once that separation occurs and there's that breakdown of conversation and dialogue, then we see more harm.
Now, last night, another group of protesters started to spray paint the building. 4 of them were arrested. Chief Day says he's very concerned about protests spreading. But Chief Day says he's not going to allow a repeat of this scene that you're seeing. If you've been around for a while, you'll remember the Occupy ICE protest that happened back in 2018 during President Trump's first term. Protesters camped out at the ICE office and blocked cars from coming in, and the facility had to be shut down for several days.
You know, we are not going to allow for things to get entrenched, and there are only negatives that come from that. Becomes much more dangerous for both community as well as for law enforcement. We know that ultimately it will need to be resolved, and when that happens, there's a certainly increased amount of risk.
A viewer, Christopher, wrote to us this weekend saying, I want to hear from Governor Kotek about how she plans to handle the president's abuse of power in federalizing the National Guard. I am scared that our strongest local force may be used against us, and that cannot be allowed to happen under any circumstances. Well, Kotek has taken a stronger stance. She signed on with other Democratic governors in a statement condemning the president's decision, calling it an abuse of power.
It is unlawful for the president to do what he has done in California. He did not get the request of the Commander-in-Chief of the California National Guard, Governor Newsom, to deploy in that state. And the circumstances did not warrant that. I disagree with that move. What we are focused on here in Oregon is being clear about, I'm the Commander-in-Chief, we are taking care of our communities. If there is any activity that needs to be taken care of, it will be done by local law enforcement. And right now, all protests have been peaceful, and there's no reason to think that will be otherwise.
So as for whether Oregon's National Guard may be deployed, especially with more protests planned this weekend, Kotek says she spoke with the Guard's adjutant general and they're on the same page about leaving protests up to local law enforcement. Well, coming up next on the story, a change of plea today for the man convicted of a deadly hit and run of a homeless man, his criminal past, plus my interactions with the victim in the case, who I talked with several times. That's next, when the story returns. A driver who hit and killed a homeless man in Portland last year pleaded guilty to a lesser charge today.
You recklessly, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, caused the death of another person, David Bentley. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so that was 23-year-old Shane McKeever agreeing he was guilty of manslaughter in the first degree in the hit-and-run death of David Bentley in February 2024. McKeever had been facing a charge of second-degree murder before the plea deal. He also pleaded no contest to attempted murder for plowing into a homeless camp during the same incident. McKeever has twice before been convicted of assault in Oregon, and investigators say he has a history of domestic violence. McKeever's sentencing is set for August 18th. But David, the homeless man he killed, he was well known. I talked with him several times in recent years while reporting on the streets. He went by the street name Dino Dave. He was 48 years old and would camp under the bridges in the Central East Side. He would tell me how tired he was of street life, despite city outreach efforts to get him into a tiny home. But here's what he told me the last time that we spoke, 6 months before he died in that hit and run.
I don't want to die out here. I don't want to die just another homeless guy, just another number.
Well, David was riding a bike when he was killed, and a few months after he died, the community held a memorial bike ride in his honor. And that white ghost bike right there sits at the site where he was killed. We're back right after this. Well, before we go tonight, an update on that stabbing at a Salem homeless shelter that injured a dozen people. Today, we've learned that 4 people are still hospitalized, but all of them are expected to survive. Back on June 1st, 42-year-old Tony Latrell Williams was arrested after he was accused of stabbing 2 shelter staff members and 10 guests at the Union Gospel Mission. Witnesses say Williams was talking to people in the shelter lobby before pulling out a knife and stabbing several people inside and outside the facility. Williams is charged with 1 count of attempted murder and 11 counts of second-degree assault. Well, that's the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. Straight Talk is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. If you ever miss an episode of The Story at 6:30, we re-air the episode at 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. on our TV app, KGW+. You can also catch us the next morning at 11:30. Download the free app now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. Have a great Monday night. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.